The galactic mercenaries had a reputation that spanned light years, a fearsome force renowned for its brutality and effectiveness. They were the personal war dogs of the Orion Syndicate, an interstellar organization known for its iron-fisted control over countless worlds and resources. Whenever a planet defied the Syndicate's will, the galactic mercenaries arrived, armed with cutting-edge weapons, devastating battlecraft, and a complete lack of mercy. With a mixture of brute strength, advanced technology, and their sheer enjoyment of conquest, these mercenaries shattered rebellions before they even began. Fear was their greatest weapon, and it worked. Few dared challenge them. But humanity was different. Earth had only recently stepped onto the galactic stage, viewed by the rest of the universe as insignificant, primitives clinging to the edges of known space. The Syndicate saw Earth as a target, a world full of valuable resources, yet too new to defend itself. To them, the conquest of Earth was only a matter of time. Humanity, though, had been learning, growing, and adapting. Each scrap of alien tech that came their way was reverse-engineered and improved, each interaction with a hostile species analyzed. Earth wasn't defenseless. It was building a silent arsenal, studying the weaknesses of those who saw it as weak. Then came the announcement. The Syndicate had issued its final warning to Earth. Submit and serve or be crushed. Humanity's leaders knew what that meant. Earth would either kneel or face annihilation. But rather than surrender, they prepared, knowing that when the Syndicate inevitably sent the galactic mercenaries, they would be ready. Leading this covert defense was a veteran soldier codenamed Rambo by his unit, a nod to an ancient human hero known for his grit and indomitable will. Rambo was more than just a warrior. He was Earth's answer to the threats looming in the stars. Hardened by countless missions and skilled in tactics few aliens could understand, he was selected for one purpose: to infiltrate and dismantle the enemy from within. Rambo was given a briefing that outlined the mercenaries' weaknesses. Despite their power, they relied on certain assumptions: that their reputation would dissuade attackers, that their technology was untouchable, that their enemies were weaker. These assumptions would be their undoing. Rambo's mission was high stakes, dangerous, and demanded everything he had. But he accepted it without question. There was no room for fear or hesitation when Earth's survival was on the line. As he prepared, Rambo felt a grim determination settle over him. His objective was clear: disrupt the mercenaries from within, cripple their command structure, and gather any intel that could be used against the Syndicate. He would be operating alone, deep in hostile territory, but that was how he preferred it. A one-man strike, swift and silent. His equipment was stripped down to the essentials, a blend of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien tech. The rest he would improvise on site. He trusted his instincts more than any weapon. In a final briefing, Earth's leaders shared a simple message. If the galactic mercenaries thought humanity would be an easy conquest, they were mistaken. Rambo was prepared to show them what happened when humans were pushed to the brink. Rambo moved silently through the alien corridors, his footsteps barely making a sound. The mercenaries had arrogantly left multiple points unguarded, their overconfidence evident. Every step he took deepened his understanding of how these warriors operated, and every small oversight he noted was another opening for him to exploit. They believed no one could infiltrate their ship. He was here to prove them wrong. He quickly reached his first objective, a crucial control panel wired into the ship's power systems. After assessing it with a glance, he attached a small EMP device, its design simple by human standards but undetectable to the mercenaries' advanced systems. In minutes, this device would send out a pulse strong enough to knock out auxiliary power in nearby sections, plunging several corridors into darkness. As he set the timer, Rambo allowed himself a brief, grim smile. Darkness would serve him well. Continuing down the hallway, he spotted another key node, this time tied to the ship's communications. The mercenaries relied heavily on centralized, closed-loop networks, a model that was strong in theory but rigid in practice. It gave them control but left them vulnerable to disruption. Rambo quickly hacked in, using small, human-designed jamming devices to block signals within the ship. The comms disruption would create the perfect confusion. He wanted the mercenaries to feel isolated, unsure of each other's positions. They were still unaware of him, but the unease would build. That unease would work in his favor. As he moved, Rambo left subtle signs. Small marks, loose wiring, flickering lights. All calculated to make the mercenaries second-guess their surroundings. The point wasn't to reveal himself, but to create a creeping tension, an invisible threat that they couldn't shake off. They were a proud species, bred for warfare, but arrogance often led to fear when the enemy fought on terms they couldn't control. Rambo understood that fear, and he knew how to make it work against them. Suddenly, he heard voices ahead. 2 mercenary guards were patrolling, oblivious to his presence as they muttered about routine and waste of time. Rambo pressed himself into a shadowed corner, his breathing controlled, waiting. The guards passed by, none the wiser. Once they were gone, he resumed his path, knowing his traps were nearly ready. The mercenaries wouldn't stay oblivious for long. Soon, they'd realize something was wrong, and that was when the real hunt would begin. Reaching the next station, he accessed a critical energy conduit. This ship's power grid was more complex than anything humans had, but Rambo was unfazed. He rigged another EMP device, this one program to trigger a cascading power failure. If everything went as planned, the lights would flicker, alarms would trigger at random intervals, and chaos would spread. The mercenaries would find themselves in the dark, separated, and vulnerable. As he finished setting up the last device, he took a moment to survey his surroundings. The ship was vast, cold, sterile. It was designed for domination, for intimidating any who opposed the Syndicate's will. Yet now its walls felt confining. The mercenaries would soon feel trapped, hunted, as their greatest advantage was stripped away bit by bit. With his final preparations in place, he hacked into a data terminal, gathering critical files on the Syndicate's fleet movements, resources, and upcoming operations. This intel would be invaluable to Earth's resistance efforts. The Syndicate thought humanity wouldn't fight back, but this data would soon be used to turn their own weapons against them. Every download, every file saved, was one more step toward leveling the playing field. As he made his way to the extraction point, he set his comm device to broadcast a final message to the Syndicate. Earth does not bow. It was a warning, simple and clear. He knew they'd dismiss it at first, but after tonight, they would have no choice but to take humanity seriously. They would learn that there were consequences for underestimating his people. The moment the EMPs triggered, the ship plunged into chaos. Lights flickered and died in several corridors, leaving sections shrouded in darkness, while the rest of the ship scrambled with faulty alarms and unresponsive systems. Rambo could hear distant voices, the sharp, barked orders of officers trying to regain control, clashing with the panicked responses of soldiers thrown off balance. Their fear was palpable, a stark contrast to the confidence they'd shown only hours before. Rambo moved quickly, navigating through the disorienting maze he'd created. With each step, he observed the disarray unfolding around him. He was no longer a shadow. They knew someone was on board, but they couldn't pinpoint him. He made sure of that. Using the mercenaries' own layout against them, he slipped through maintenance passages and auxiliary hallways, his presence always one step ahead of their search parties. One by one, he encountered isolated groups of soldiers trying to restore order. With swift, calculated precision, he neutralized each, avoiding drawn-out confrontations. A few quick strikes, pressure points, a muffled gasp, and he moved on. There was no need for open combat. These soldiers were disoriented, separated from their units, and that was all he needed. They were unprepared for someone who fought with his level of focus and ruthlessness. As he made his way toward the command center, he came across more signs of confusion. A pair of guards arguing, tech crews fumbling with malfunctioning consoles, an officer shouting at subordinates who had lost contact with other squads. Every mercenary he passed was now aware on some level that they were being hunted. Rambo moved through it all like a ghost, leaving nothing but the growing realization that their enemy was not only skilled but relentless. Reaching the command center, Rambo took a calculated risk and entered, locking the doors behind him. The officers inside turned, startled by the sudden intrusion. Before they could react, he disabled their weapons with precise shots, his movements swift and unforgiving. Without their advanced technology and confidence, they were unprepared for the raw, direct approach he brought. Their shock turned to fear as they realized they were completely vulnerable. "Who are you?" one of the officers demanded, his voice trembling. But Rambo didn't respond. He simply accessed their main console, downloading critical data, fleet routes, resource locations, the Syndicate's strategic vulnerabilities. The officers watched, helpless, as he extracted every secret they'd kept secure, every piece of information they had believed would remain safe from the hands of their enemies. With the download complete, Rambo placed a final device on the central console. A timed explosive, small but powerful enough to destroy the entire command center. He turned and walked away, leaving the officers trapped inside. They had chosen to make humanity an enemy, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. As he exited, he didn't look back. He had no interest in watching the explosion. His mission was far from over. In the chaos of the remaining corridors, the mercenaries were no longer pursuing him. Instead, they were in full retreat, desperate to escape the inferno that was consuming their ship from within. Rambo slipped through the last stretch of hallways, moving swiftly toward the extraction point, knowing that his work here would send a powerful message to the Syndicate. As he neared his escape route, he caught sight of his reflection in a darkened panel. A lone human, battle-worn, unyielding, and carrying the scars of 100 battles. He understood, in that moment, that he wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for the right to stand unbent in a galaxy that saw humanity as nothing more than an easy conquest. The Syndicate would remember this night. With the command center in ruins and the mercenaries' flagship in disarray, Rambo made his final move. He slipped into an escape pod, initiating the launch sequence with practice speed. Outside the viewport, explosions erupted through the ship's hull, the result of his carefully placed charges detonating one by one. Systems were failing across the vessel, and for the first time, the mercenaries were facing total defeat. Not from an armada, but from one human operating alone. The escape pod shot forward, leaving the crippled flagship shrinking behind him, its lights flickering, a testament to Earth's fierce resistance. As the pod sped away, Rambo took a moment to survey the data he'd secured. Every file was intact: fleet deployments, Syndicate plans, resources. Earth now held the Syndicate's playbook, a trove of intel that could change the entire course of the conflict. Humanity wouldn't be a target or a victim. They would become a force the galaxy had no choice but to reckon with. Back on Earth, the command center awaited Rambo's return. His superiors knew only the broad details of the mission, but they trusted him with their future. And he had delivered. When he arrived, his debrief was brief and to the point, as always. He handed over the data drive, watching as analysts rushed to access its contents. The Syndicate's secrets, once thought untouchable, were now in human hands, and the shift in power was undeniable. His commanding officer looked at him, a mix of respect and something that bordered on awe. "You did it. They'll never underestimate us again," she said, her voice steady but filled with an unmistakable pride. Rambo nodded. The mission was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. Earth had struck the first blow, proving that they were not prey. The Syndicate would soon realize that their actions had sparked a relentless opposition. Across the galaxy, news of the flagship's destruction spread like wildfire. Rumors circulated of a lone human soldier who had infiltrated the feared mercenaries and left them reeling. The Syndicate scrambled to counter the story, but it was too late. Word of Earth's defiance was out, reaching not only Syndicate-controlled worlds but also other species living under the Syndicate's rule. To them, Earth's stand was a spark of hope, a sign that even the mightiest could be challenged. Rambo's actions would inspire others, and soon, whispers of rebellion and independence began to ripple through Syndicate space. Humanity had done more than secure its own survival. It had ignited a movement. The mercenaries had once been the symbol of Syndicate power, but now they were a reminder of Syndicate vulnerability. As systems questioned their loyalty and citizens looked to Earth's example, the Syndicate faced a new challenge: keeping its empire intact. In the following weeks, Earth fortified its defenses, using the stolen data to anticipate Syndicate counterattacks and bolster their own fleet. Engineers, scientists, and military personnel worked around the clock, repurposing alien technology and preparing for what lay ahead. Earth's leaders had a clear vision. Not just survival, but autonomy. A future where humanity dictated its own fate without fear of invasion. As Rambo returned to active duty, he knew that the fight was far from over. The Syndicate would retaliate, seeking to reclaim the power it had lost. But he also knew that humanity had something the Syndicate couldn't understand. Unity born of adversity, resilience forged in the fires of survival, and a fierce determination to protect their home. Whatever came next, Earth was ready. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity didn't fear giants. It brought them down.